G'day guys, Socket here. In today's episode we're going to have a look at whether you can use pink noise or moving mic measurements and mix them with analog sweep measurements. So for example, can you use the moving mic method to, for example, do all your full range measures and set your crossovers and things, and then when it comes to time alignment and phase alignment, can you then use a sweep method or an analog sweep method to get your impulse and time and kind of combine the two methods together when you're doing your car audio tune? So we're going to cover this today, and this question comes from one of our viewers, Matthew Pierce 6420, who writes, "Socket, excellent videos. I noticed that you use pink noise to take original measurements, but then use sweeps to check the crossovers. Is there a reason for this? I want to make sure I'm doing it right." Well, hopefully I'm going to answer not only Matt's question today, but also answer the question of can you mix pink noise and sweep measures when you do a tune. Let's go take a look. So one of the reasons it might look like I'm mixing up different measurement methods when I'm doing my tunes is because of the way that I have all my content spread out on my channel. But there is a lot of content, and it's sort of listed in order of when stuff was published. So if you're sort of just watching along and you're wondering, oh, how come you're suddenly doing something using pink noise and then in the next minute you're doing something using sweeps, it's probably because you're not watching the videos in order. And what I mean by that is there are the channel is set up with basically demonstrating three different ways of doing tuning. Using the moving mic method, using the analog mic to do sweeps, or using USB mics to do sweeps. And if we look at any one of these playlists, and let's take the moving mic method for example, it takes you through all the various steps, from step 1 about setting everything up all the way through to step 7 about doing fine tuning. And at the beginning of each tutorial, each playlist is this, starting tutorial, which is it's called a step-by-step guide. And in that step-by-step guide, it covers, at I think timestamp 18 or something like that, it shows this diagram where down the left are the 7 steps that make up the tuning method that I use, and then the 3 different ways of doing tuning, depending on whether you want to use the moving mic method and pink noise, or whether you want to use an analog mic with sweeps, and then this hybrid version in the middle where you can use a USB mic to do sweeps, right? So the way that the tutorials are laid out is that there are some steps that are unique to each method, and there are some steps that are common to each method. So doing house curves and EQ are common, but taking full range measurements differs from method to method. And so the easiest way to follow it all is to pick a playlist and watch it from beginning to end. But can you mix pink noise and analog sweeps when you're doing a tune? So for example, as we said before, using the moving mic method and pink noise to, for example, measure your speakers and do your EQ work, and then when it comes to time alignment, taking some analog sweep measures and then doing your time alignment using phase and impulse measures, right? And the short answer is technically yes, you can. What you need to be aware of though is you are fundamentally using 2 different measurement techniques to measure the response of your speakers, and you can and will get different results. Now what I mean by that is if we have a look at the moving mic method and we look at this diagram, the moving mic method uses pink noise, which is a very specific test signal, and then you use a tool called a real-time analyzer to analyze that pink noise response and give you the frequency response of your speakers. And when you are doing a sweep measure, we are using a sweep tone, which is a very specific signal, completely different to pink noise, and we're using what we call a transfer function engine to analyze the results that are coming back through your speaker to provide us with the frequency response and the phase and the impulse information, but they are two fundamentally different measurement methods, and you end up with slightly different results from those measures. It's not like measuring temperature in Celsius and Fahrenheit, which are just different different scales, for want of a better term, but they are fundamentally two different ways. And so let me just explain what I mean by that. So here are some measurements that I've taken, full range measurements of the speakers in the little Audi A1, our little demo car, using sweep measures, and then doing the same measurements using the moving mic method. And let's just have a look at how they differ. So let me just pull up this, first of all, the left tweeter, which is was taken using a sweep measure. Okay, so here's the impulse response for that. But that's the left tweeter, and let's have a look at the left tweeter using the moving mic method. So that's in purple, and a couple of things that you'll notice is that with the moving mic method, it's the frequency tends to drop off earlier, and you can see it's not exactly the same, right? It's a little bit different. Now these are both in 1/6 resolution and both taken at the same volume level, right? So let's use another example. Let's look at the right mid. So this is the full range measure of the right mid using a sweep, and the right mid using the moving mic method. So once again, the sweep at the very high frequencies tends to hold on a little longer, whereas it rolls off a little earlier using the moving mic method. And they're not exactly the same. This dip is, appears a little earlier with the moving mic method, and there's some differences. The general shape is still the same, but they're not identical, right? And if we have a look at another example, let's take the full range for the left mid bass. So this is using the sweep, and this is using the moving mic method. The same type of thing. You can see that they're not identical. The general shape is kind of the same. They've got this dip going on here that they both reflect. This one's not quite as pronounced, in the moving mic method. So the takeaway from all of that is that you just need to be aware, if you are going to mix methods, that the results are not going to be identical. And is that really a problem? Probably not. Because at the end of the day, all of your measurements and all of your stuff that you're doing in REW is just getting you to a point where you've got things basically all set up, and then you're going to really finish the tune off by adjusting everything with your ears. And the reason for that is, doesn't matter which method that you use, the microphone and your ears hear things differently. The microphone is going to display the sound pressures that it's receiving, reflections and room and the environmental noise and everything sort of rolled into that. And it really doesn't matter at the end of the day what the graphs are telling you, it's what you can hear with your ears. So why do we have two different methods? Why do I even bother showing you several different methods? And what do the professional car tuners actually use? Well, let's have a quick talk about that. So when I think about these two methods, there are three fundamental differences. The first one is the cost to get set up to be able to do your tuning. So with the Pink Noise moving mic method, it's pretty cheap because you only need a USB microphone and a laptop of some type, and away you go. You've got all the equipment that you need to do your tunes. With the sweep method, however, you're going to need your laptop and a microphone and audio interface and some way of connecting to your DSP, and so it's a lot more expensive to kind of get set up. The second major difference is the information that you get. They are two different methods, so you end up with two different sets of information. With the Pink Noise and the moving mic method, you end up with a frequency response for your speakers, but you don't get impulse and phase information as you do if you're doing the sweep method, right, and the sweep measurement method. So that is fundamentally the difference between the two methods. The type of information that you get from the measurements or the measurement methods themselves. The third major difference is the skill level you need to be able to do a successful tune. So with the pink noise method, because you're just using a single mic and you're getting limited information, it requires a lot more skill than the sweep method. And what I mean by that is you need to be very consistent with the way that you're moving your microphone and sampling the sound around the listening position to get a real and consistent results every time you take your measurements. The second area where you need more skill is to know what to listen for while you're doing your tuning. When your speakers are summing up, how that maximum summation sounds, the focus and the clarity, and the centering of your image, you need to know what to listen for. And if you're new to car audio, that can be particularly difficult because you may not have the references that you need to know when your speakers are aligned or your speakers are properly imaging, right? And so when you think about the sweep method, you need less of that experience and skill to be able to do a decent tune, mainly because you put the microphone on the headrest or in the listening position, and as long as you don't move it or it's in the same position all the time, then your measurements are going to be the same all the time. It doesn't rely on you having perfected some sort of moving mic technique, right? The second reason why you need less skill is when it comes to things like EQ and time alignment. You're largely going to be using REW to do all of that work, and you're just basically lining up impulse peaks or phase plots or something, and you can end up with a decent tune. So my recommendation is, if you're new to car audio tuning and you can afford it, then certainly use analog sweeps to do your tunes. Once you've got that mastered and you know what to listen for, then you can move on to doing, the moving mic method and using pink noise. And that's why, the professional car audio tuners that I know of, all of them with the exception of one use pink noise and the moving mic method, because they've been doing this stuff for years and they know exactly what to listen for. It's quick to set up. It's easy just to jump in the car with the mic, make some taps or make some changes in the DSP and get the car dialed in. In fact, most professionals do their tuning by ears. A lot of them use REW mainly to do the EQ work and stuff like that, but when it comes to time alignment and getting the image centered and everything, it's all done by ear. But so as I said earlier, does that mean that you can't combine techniques? I think the only limitation is cost. Not everybody can afford to buy USB mics for pink noise and an analog mic and audio interfaces to do sweeps and things. But if you can, why not? You could buy all of the equipment and use whatever techniques you want to. Really, at the end of the day, as long as we get to the same endpoint with having a basic tune, and we're finishing that off by not following what the graphs are telling us, but listening with our ears and dialing our tune in so it sounds good to us, doesn't necessarily look good on the graphs, but sounds good in the car. That is what you're aiming to do. So from that perspective, if you want to mix techniques and it works for you, I say go for it. I personally, I have mixed techniques in the past. Just be aware that the measurements are not exactly the same between the two. Not that that's necessarily a huge problem at the end of the day, but just be aware of that. But certainly the way that I've set up the tutorials in the channel is you have your moving mic method, and if you want to know how to get a tune, follow it and do that, then grab that playlist and follow it from top to bottom. If you want to do the sweeps, once again, jump on the playlist, follow it from top to bottom. It'll show you how to do the sweeps. But Matt, I hope that has helped answer your question. And for everybody else that was wondering, whether you could mix techniques, I hope that's covered that as well. Anyway, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. If you've got any questions or comments, please chuck them down below. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Otherwise, I will catch you in the next episode.